The clock on your wall this morning did not care whether you felt like getting up. It moved anyway. And most people live exactly like that clock, moving but not arriving. They call it a busy season. They call it grinding. They call it paying dues. But quietly, late at night, when the house is finally still, they wonder why so much motion has produced so little progress. You have felt this. Maybe you feel it right now. 10 years into a career that was supposed to feel different by now. Watching people you graduated with post lives that look further along, wondering what they know that you don't. Working harder than your father ever worked, yet somehow further from the peace he had. This is not a confession. This is simply what happens to people who mistake activity for advancement. Picture a man rowing a boat with everything he has. Sweat on his back, arms burning, oars slapping the water in perfect rhythm. From the shore, he looks committed. He looks like a man going somewhere. But the current beneath him is stronger than his effort, and so he stays exactly where he started, rowing beautifully in place. Nobody told him to check his position. Nobody told him that effort without direction is just exhaustion with good posture. This is the quiet tragedy of the hardworking and unfulfilled. Not laziness, not a lack of ambition, a misunderstanding of what actually moves a life forward. We are taught to chase goals. Nobody teaches us what stands between the goal and the life we actually want. We assume that wanting it badly enough will be sufficient. We assume that a strong enough why will carry us through. And for a season, it does. Until the feeling fades, as feelings always do, and we are left standing in the gap between where we are and where we said we wanted to be, with nothing but the memory of how motivated we once felt. Here's what almost nobody says out loud. A goal is a direction. It was never meant to be a vehicle. You cannot ride a destination. You need something built to carry you the distance. Something that does not care how you feel on a given Tuesday morning. Something that works whether inspiration shows up or not. Most people never build that thing. So they stay on the shore, admiring their own effort, wondering why the water never changes beneath them. There is a difference between wanting a life and constructing one. And the difference is not talent. It is not luck. It is not even hard work, not in the way we usually define it. What that difference actually is, and why almost everyone overlooks it in favor of something that feels better in the short run, is where we go next. Most people do not fail because they lack desire. They fail because desire is loud and discipline is quiet. And in a noisy life, the loud thing always wins the argument. Desire will get you to sign up for the gym. Discipline is what gets you there on the Tuesday you don't want to go. Desire will get you to start the business. Discipline is what keeps the doors open in month 11, when the excitement has long since left the building and only the work remains. Here is the part nobody wants to hear. Discipline does not feel good in the moment it is required. It feels good afterward. In the results it quietly assembles over months you weren't watching closely. But in the moment itself, discipline feels like a small tax, a minor inconvenience. One skipped rep, one skipped page, one skipped hour of focused work. Each one so small it seems unworthy of guilt. This is precisely why it works on you. Nothing that small should be able to bankrupt a life. And yet it does, one unremarkable decision at a time, the same way a slow leak sinks a ship far more reliably than a single hole ever could. A slow leak does not announce itself. There is no alarm, no siren, no dramatic moment where the water rushes in. There is only a little more weight in the hull each day, a little less room between you and the waterline, until one ordinary morning you notice the deck feels lower than it used to, and you cannot say exactly when that happened. This is how careers stall. This is how marriages grow distant. This is how a body ages faster than it should. Not through disaster. Through neglect delivered in installments too small to notice and too consistent to ignore. And so people find themselves years into a life they did not consciously choose, wondering how they arrived there, when the truth is they arrived exactly where their daily choices were always going to take them. Nobody decides to fail. People simply decide, one comfortable moment at a time, not to do the difficult thing today. And life obliges by compounding that decision without asking permission. What makes this worse is that the difficult thing rarely announces its importance either. Discipline never arrives wearing a sign that says, "This is the moment that matters." It shows up disguised as something forgettable. Answer the hard email or avoid it. Wake up at the hour you set or negotiate with yourself for 20 more minutes. Have the honest conversation or let it slide another week. None of these feel like turning points. All of them are. This is the trap. Not weakness of character, but a failure to recognize the size of the moment you are standing in. You do not get to choose when the important moments arrive. You only get to choose whether you treat the small ones as if they matter. Because by the time you can see clearly that they did, the account has already been debited. So if discipline is this quiet, this easy to underestimate, this easy to postpone, what actually makes a person choose it anyway, day after day, long after motivation has left the room? That is the turning point worth understanding. Here is the turning point, and it is simpler than most people want it to be. Discipline is not a personality trait. It is not something certain people are born with and others are not. Discipline is a bridge, and a bridge does not require motivation to hold weight. It requires structure. This is the whole secret hiding in plain sight. You do not need to feel strong to cross a bridge. You only need the bridge to be built correctly. Most people spend their lives searching for a feeling instead of building a structure. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel motivated. They wait for the fire to return, the way it felt in the beginning, forgetting that fire consumes fast and burns out faster. A bridge does not burn out. A bridge, once built, simply stands there, indifferent to the weather, available every single day, regardless of how anyone feels about crossing it. This is the difference between people who accomplish what they set out to do and people who merely announce it. The ones who accomplish it stopped asking themselves how they felt about the work. They built something that did not require feeling. A time they get up regardless of the number on the clock feeling personal. A minimum they hit regardless of whether the day cooperated. A standard that does not put itself up for a vote each morning. Goals live on one side of the canyon. Accomplishment lives on the other. Between them is a drop deep enough to swallow every good intention a person has ever had. And the only way across that drop is not desire, not vision, not even talent. It is structure sturdy enough to hold your weight on the days you have nothing left to give it. This is why talented people fail and average people succeed with startling regularity. Talent is not a bridge. Talent is simply a shorter distance to cross. It does not remove the canyon. It only changes how far the person has to fall if there is nothing underneath them. Understand this and something shifts. You stop asking why you don't feel motivated today. Wrong question. You start asking whether the structure holds without the feeling. Did you do the work anyway? Did you show up anyway? Did the bridge carry you across regardless of the weather in your own head? That is the only question that has ever mattered, and it is the only one most people have never been taught to ask. This is also why discipline, once understood correctly, stops feeling like punishment. A bridge is not a punishment. It is a mercy. It is the thing that spares you from having to feel brave every single day just to get to the other side. You do not have to talk yourself into crossing a bridge. You just walk it because it is there, because you built it to be there, because you were tired of hoping the canyon would close on its own. But knowing this in theory changes nothing until you have seen it hold weight in a real life, under real pressure, when everything in a person wanted to quit. And those examples exist. They are not rare. You have likely lived near one without recognizing what you were looking at. Consider the man who wanted to write a book for 15 years. He had the idea. He had the passion. Every January, he announced it again with real conviction, to real applause from people who believed him because he believed himself. And every December, the book still did not exist. Not because the idea was weak, because he was waiting to feel like a writer before he did the work of writing. and that feeling never scheduled itself around his convenience. Then one year he stopped waiting. He gave himself 1 page a day, no more required, no less accepted. Some days the page was brilliant. Most days it was mediocre. It did not matter. The bridge did not care about the quality of any single crossing. It only cared that he crossed it. 11 months later, without a single day of feeling particularly inspired, he had a finished manuscript built entirely out of ordinary Tuesdays. Consider the farmer, because the farmer understands something the modern mind keeps forgetting. A farmer does not plant in March and demand the harvest arrive by April simply because he worked hard that week. The farmer plants and then does the unglamorous work of tending, watering ground that shows no visible change, pulling weeds from soil that gives no applause, watching a field that appears, for months, to be doing absolutely nothing. Anyone judging that farmer's progress in June would call him a failure. They would be wrong, because they are measuring a harvest against a timeline that belongs to planting. This is precisely the mistake made by the person 3 years into a difficult transition, comparing their bare field to someone else's harvest, unaware that the someone else planted a decade earlier and simply stopped announcing the years it took root beneath the surface. Consider also the retired boxer who once said the fight is won or lost far away from witnesses. In the early hours, in empty gyms, long before the arena lights and the noise. Nobody applauds a person for the 4th mile run alone before sunrise. There is no audience for that. There is only the bridge, being built 1 plank at a time, in a place nobody is watching and nobody is required to be watching. What connects the writer, the farmer, and the fighter is not talent. It is not circumstance. It is that each of them stopped needing the moment to feel significant before they honored it. They treated an ordinary Tuesday with the same seriousness most people reserve for a crisis. And in doing so, they were quietly building the only thing that was ever going to get them across. This is available to anyone. It requires no special beginning, no permission, no dramatic origin story. It only requires the willingness to do a small, unglamorous, uninspiring thing today, and then again tomorrow, long after it stops feeling new. Which raises the only honest question left. Not whether this works. The evidence is everywhere once you know to look for it. But how a person actually begins building that bridge in the middle of an already full, already tired, already complicated life. That is where we go next. Start smaller than your pride will allow. This is where most people sabotage themselves before they even begin. They design a bridge meant for the person they hope to become instead of the person currently getting out of bed each morning. They commit to an hour when they have never sustained 10 minutes. They commit to 5 days a week when they have not proven one. Then, predictably, they miss a day, feel like a failure, and abandon the entire structure rather than admit the structure was oversized from the start. Build the bridge to hold the weight you actually carry today. You can always add another plank later. You cannot rebuild trust in yourself once it collapses under a weight you were never ready for. Attach the discipline to a time, not a feeling. This matters more than people realize. If your plan depends on finding the motivation to do the thing, you have built a bridge with no foundation, only decoration. But if the thing is simply attached to 7 in the morning, or to the first 10 minutes after your last meeting ends, it stops being a decision and becomes a location you arrive at. You do not decide each morning whether to brush your teeth. It happens because it is fixed to a moment, not to a mood. Discipline works the same way once it stops asking your feelings for permission. Lower the standard for showing up and raise the standard for consistency. 1 page, not a chapter. 10 minutes, not an hour. A single honest conversation, not a complete resolution. The size of the action is almost irrelevant. What matters is that the bridge gets crossed today and crossed again tomorrow until crossing it is simply what you do. The way certain people simply do not consider skipping their morning routine an option worth debating. Track the bridge, not the harvest. Do not measure your progress by the outcome, which is often invisible for longer than feels fair. Measure it by whether you crossed the bridge today. Did you do the small thing? That is the entire question. The harvest will arrive on its own schedule, the way it always has, the way it always will, indifferent to how badly you want to rush it. Expect resistance on precisely the days that matter most. The day you least feel like crossing the bridge is rarely a random day. It is often the exact day the bridge was built for. Anyone can cross on a good day. The good days were never the problem. Build the expectation into the plan itself. Some days this will feel like nothing, and you will do it anyway, because that was always the point. And protect the bridge from your own good moods as fiercely as you protect it from your bad ones. A burst of inspiration convinces people to overbuild, to add 10 more planks in a single afternoon out of excitement and exhaust themselves before the structure has even been tested by an ordinary week. Consistency, not intensity, is what a bridge is made of. None of this requires a transformation. It requires a Tuesday, an unremarkable, forgettable Tuesday, repeated on purpose until the distance between where you stand and where you meant to be has quietly closed beneath your feet. And you look back one day, the way people always eventually do, and realize the canyon is behind you. Go back to that man rowing against the current, sweat on his back, arms burning, moving with everything he had and going nowhere. You know him now. You may have recognized him as someone close to you. You may have recognized him as yourself. The current beneath him was never the real problem. Effort was never the real problem. The problem was that nobody had told him a bridge existed, that he did not have to fight the water at all, that somewhere upstream, planks laid one at a time by people willing to do unglamorous work in private, had already spanned the exact distance he was drowning himself trying to cross. You have that bridge available to you now, not as a metaphor to admire, but as a decision available to you, starting tonight or tomorrow morning at the hour you choose to attach it to. One plank, then another. Not because you feel ready, not because the fire has returned, the way it felt in the beginning, because the bridge was never built out of fire. It was built out of Tuesdays nobody was watching. Understand what this means for the plateau you have quietly felt in your own career. The comparison you do not say out loud when someone your age seems further along. The pressure of working hard and still falling behind schedule on a life you can picture clearly but cannot yet touch. None of that closes through a single decision made in a burst of inspiration tonight. It closes the way every canyon has ever closed. One small, consistent, unremarkable crossing at a time, made without applause, made without anyone checking whether you showed up. This is the part where I ask you to consider something. Not because it is owed to me, but because of what it will cost you if you close this out and let the feeling fade the way every feeling eventually does. If this reached something true in you, do not let it end as a moment you once felt inspired. Stay near this kind of thinking. Come back to it before the current pulls you back to old habits, because it will try. Growth does not ask permission before it fades either. It requires the same daily maintenance as everything else worth keeping. The pain of discipline weighs ounces. The pain of regret weighs a lifetime you don't get to redo. You already know which one you have been carrying, quietly, on mornings when the mirror asks questions you'd rather not answer. So build the bridge. Start with a plank too small to be impressive. Attach it to a time, not a mood. Protect it on your best days and your worst ones equally. And stop measuring the harvest before the planting season has even finished its work beneath the surface. The canyon does not close itself, but it has closed for others, quietly, one Tuesday at a time. And there is no reason on this earth it cannot close for you.